Now, just a brief story how we got into this Department of Defense. Asked me one day, a general called me and said that, would you like to attend a meeting that we are having with Russian scientists who had experience of micronutrient on their troops fighting in Afghanistan war? So I said, of course, it was great honor. And so we went there, and for one, is that what you wanted, Dr. Piccola?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Absolutely.
So this is a very interesting story how it all evolved. And so I sat one hour, and through the interpreter, we got what they have. And they claimed that during that war, if they gave him micronutrient formulation of some kind, and that the patient recovered from the injury much better, and they were much more able to do their respective jobs. And so after 1 hour meeting, I heard it. And so when they all left, then General asked me, can you make a formula, something like that the Russian scientist presented? I said, I have a better than that. Then he said, well, then you have to get approval from our scientist that if what you are saying has any validity. So for next 6 months, I gave 17 lectures to various branches of the army and to their scientific group. And as you know, they are very conservative scientists, and rightly so. And they asked a question, I answered them. And then they said, no, you have some very good scientific evidence-based formulation, but you have to test it. I said, we don't have money. Then he said, well, you go to the Congress. So for next 9 months, I walked many times on the corridor of Congress and the House and the Senate, and met the representative from both sides, and convinced them to issue a grant for studying micronutrient in defense. So they issued it, but not to us particularly, but it was general information that anybody can participate for that grant. And I wrote 60-page grant, and then they approved it. And so from it was 2001. And then so after that approval, we got the money. Now we have to test it. So then we went to Naval Health Research Center, or NHRC, in San Diego to find out if they would be able to have money to do the experiment. And so fortunately, we ran a study on him first. It took about, before you do anything to marine, you have to go through what is called IRB, Institutional Review Board, who determine the safety of the product. And so it took about 9 months and provided all the information they ever wanted to prove that our product that we have developed is totally safe. And then we ran on a Palm 29, they get a training, and their environment is terrible, and their noise and everything. And so we ran a placebo-controlled trial, and at the end of 12 weeks, at that time we used to call micro daily as military micronutrient formulation. And at some point, Jeff will show you the things that we used to use it, package. And so we found that at the end of 12 weeks, those troops who take a micro daily, I will call them micro daily, they had a very little oxidative damage, very little production of free radical damage. But those who were placebo group, they suffer oxidative damage. So that was the first demonstration that our product reduces free radical damage. And then after that, the Naval Medical Center, where the Dr. Hoffer was the captain, called me, said, we should do something on veterans returning from war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I said, sure, we will be glad to do it. So we worked out a protocol and got approval from their IRB, or Institutional Review Board, and we ran a trial on veterans, and they were all young, and they were coming from war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And as you know, first they go to Germany for treatment, and then they come to Naval Medical Center for further treatment. And so it takes, by the time they exposed to traumatic brain injury, by the time they come to San Diego Naval Medical Center, it takes about 3 months. Even that, so he divided these two groups. One group got the standard therapy that they were getting all these years, and another group got a standard therapy plus micro daily. And they were suffering from a balancing problem and dizziness. These were two main features that they were exhibiting at that time, because this is kind of acute effect. And so they found, again, a study was for 12 weeks, and they found that and Dr. Hoffer has a machine to measure quantitatively the criteria of improvement in dizziness or balancing problem. And in all criteria, they found at the end of 12 weeks, the group which got both a standard therapy plus microdaily did much better than the group just got the standard therapy alone. So there was, again, a very important observation, and he presented this work in the International Meeting of Audiology in Europe. And so we were very encouraged. And as you know, we have done some other study on civilian showing that our product has been extensively tested for reducing oxidative stress, which is because of the production of free radicals, and which causes chronic inflammation. And as you know, these two are culprits of many kind of disease. And I know those were the acute effect, but I also know that the veterans suffer as a late effect. Suffer from PTSD as more advanced. 40% of the people who had a traumatic brain injury, they develop PTSD. And so PTSD is very problem. Also, veterans suffer, just like civilian, very high risk of diabetes. And actually, with the Army in Walter Reed, Dr. Vygotsky was in charge of endocrine department. We developed a collaboration to test our product efficacy in the veterans to reduce the risk of diabetes. And there, again, we have to go through IRB, Institutional Review Board, for approval before we do the experiment. And so we got approval, and an experiment started. But unfortunately, my previous company, Premier Micronutrient Corporation, that I formed, the CEO and everything went bankrupt. So we could not complete that study. But the fact that the protocol was approved by the IRB tells me that they must have felt it has very high chance of success. And so, and also I have published a paper on PTSD and both traumatic brain injury in a peer-reviewed journal showing that increased oxidative damage because of the excessive production of free radicals and chronic inflammation are the major contributor to PTSD. And of course, then as you advance it, then you get anxiety, you get a depression associated between, you have a nightmare. All these things are then many biological phenomena of brain, like you have started releasing excessive amount of what is called glutamate, which causes a anxiety and depression. And then the way we have developed right now our formulation, that not only microdaily alone, but in combination with other one that I will discuss later on. I will give you one anecdotal story, but it is true that when we are waiting to testify before the Congress on PTSD to secure more money for PTSD, a young with a uniform was just walking on the house corridor, and they said, what you guys are doing here? I said, we are waiting for the congressman to come and to testify on PTSD. So he said, can I sit with you guys? I said, of course, yes. And he was fully informed and looked like a high official with all colorful badges. And so, but he was not more than, say, 35 or 36 years old. He was a young fellow. And so then he sat, and after an hour, the meeting was over, and congressmen were very sympathetic. And so he came out and he said, can I get some of your formulation? And at that time, we did not even test the formulation. It was, he just had a formulation because I was attending, I was trying to secure money and things like that. And so So we sent them anyway. And he said, and he told us that I'm veterans and it looks like I have a PTSD because I have a nightmare. I'm angry with my wife. And he owns a car dealership. He said, I used to be very pleasant before the war, but now I'm very angry with people and so on and so forth. And so I said, well, I don't know because we have not tested it, but here is the formula, you can try it. So my CEO at the time, he sent them a 3-month supply. And he wrote about a 5-6 page long handwritten letter that how this product was useful. Now I'm very pleasant to my wife, to my associate, and I shared your vitamin with my fellow veterans who had the same problem. And so he thanked us a lot. And so since then I have become, and I'm glad that Dr. Piccola has organized a veteran night, and I want to help our product help, and CEO and Dr. Piccola is committed to your well-being, and therefore we will do everything possible to help you. And of course, you always consult to your doctor. And in the army, my contemporary may have retired from the army. So, for example, Walter Reed Hospital, I knew some of the hierarchy, but now they must have retired. But in any case, anytime you need my help or you have questions, I will be always there